In the last tutorial, we discussed the job of turning forms into files and then extracting output from those files and all the words that Unibase uses to describe the process. In this tutorial, we will introduce to you the Unibase environment and the meta files necessary for doing that job. This is a desktop, which you probably guessed already. Here is my icon for Unibase, which I will now double-click. This takes us to the first question Unibase asks you. Do you want the modern graphical interface or the traditional menu one? I told you before that Unibase never throws away the past without compelling reason, and since many of our customers are already quite familiar with the traditional interface, it remains an option today. Whether this question shows up is a settable feature, and in future tutorials I will set that feature so that the question does not show up, but I thought you should see it once so that it doesn't surprise you later. For this tutorial, we will be using the graphical interface. The next question Unibase asks is for your operator name. I do not know of a data entry company with only one keyer, and since one of the features of Unibase is to keep a log of productivity and other statistics for all your keyers, Unibase needs to know which user or keyer is using the system. It is called operator name instead of keyer name because at one time the keyer was known as the operator and the user was called the programmer. But programmers needed an operator name too, so the term operator started to be ambiguous. Then Unibase reached a point where actual programming is only necessary when you're doing something really, really fancy, so programmer as a term became a bit ambiguous as well. With two very ambiguous terms in the works, we decided it was easier to just change the terminology. Now both users and keyers can be called operators without confusion, hopefully, and while all your programmers are users, not all your users have to be programmers. You also see, grayed out, the security login. Unibase has extensive security features that can, for example, help you keep outsiders from seeing your sensitive data. But to keep things simple, they are disabled for this tutorial. I will log in with the name DMAC, which is an operator name that is installed at the same time as Unibase. This finally brings us to what has been lurking in the background all this time, the Unibase Explorer, which is the starting point for the Unibase environment. The Explorer is designed to look and act very much like the Windows Explorer and has mostly the same goal, to allow you to manage all the files and meta files that are associated with Unibase. That is, copy, delete, create, and change. But the Unibase Explorer has some tweaks that make it a lot more useful for dealing with Unibase than the Windows Explorer. The Unibase environment lets you do other things as well, defining how to do new jobs, processing the files created by existing jobs, getting those files, fiddling with the Unibase environment itself, and last on the list, a shortcut to Unibase's own text editor, in case you feel like writing something with it that isn't a standard Unibase file. But these are all different tutorials. Note that at the top of the left-hand pane is the name of the main Unibase folder. Most places only ever need one, but some like to have a separate environment for their users to play in so the users cannot disturb the keyers. And this is helpful to those people for determining which environment they're using. Underneath this main folder are a number of subfolders. Each of these folders represents a different type of metafile, with some exceptions. The Files folder holds all the files that make the metafiles metafiles. Temp and Text are folders provided for the convenience of programmers, and the Help folder gives you a place to store written instructions, help files, for the keyers of specific forms. Now we'll go over some of these meta files. I'm not going to hit all of them, but I will hit the most important ones. The required information for Unibase to do a job is stored in the record format, which defines how a record is formatted, what fields make up the record, and how to present that record to the keyer for keying. Also, the record format defines any special processing that needs to be done on any given field in two ways. First, Unibase has a bunch of automatic ways to control the contents of a field while it is being keyed. These ways can be ticked on and off like a checkbox, and if the keyer can be considered an author, Then these let the user act like an editor, so they are called checkbox edits. But if a field requires special processing that is not already provided by Unibase, the user can write a field edit, which is a program that defines a new way to monitor and control the contents of a field. Because a field edit often needs to access information from multiple records and fields in the same job, there is only one field edit program for an entire job. But which fields that field edit processes is stored here in the record format. Theoretically, all you need to do a job is the record format. But if you need more than one record format, or are going to use the programmable features of Unibase, like field edits, you need to tell Unibase how those record formats relate to each other and what programs to use. You can tell Unibase this information at the same time you are ready to key the job, but you only have to do this once to decide it is boring, repetitive, and wasteful. It is far easier to collect this information in one place so you can do the same job over and over again. This kind of repeatable job is called a standard job, which is also the name of the file that collects this information. You can see here where it records all the record formats associated with the job, the order those record formats are presented to the keyer, and the name of the field edit used with that job. Should special processing be required on a file that is not immediately available through these standard Unibase settings, then, just like with field edits, the user can write a file edit to define a new way to monitor and control the contents of an entire file. And which file edit to use is stored here as well. One last program associated with a standard job is the output program, which, as you can guess, are programs that define how a file should be output, in the sense that I used the word 3 minutes and 30 seconds into the last tutorial. Which output program is stored in the standard job as well. This is data entry, the Unibase way. I zipped through a lot of the Unibase environment without explaining how I did it. I promise this will be covered in future tutorials. Mostly, I just wanted you to get a feel for the terms I will be using. If I went too fast, you can look through the glossary at your leisure. Now that we are speaking the same language, I can teach you how to create your own job using Unibase, and that starts with the next tutorial, the record format.